Hi everybody, MichaelBtheGameGenie here. Thank you so very much for watching. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the newest release from New Wave Toys in their 1/6 scale home arcade line, the Space Ace X Replicade Dedicated Edition. So that's right guys, today I'm going to be reviewing the Space Ace X Replicade, and I want to say a huge thank you to New Wave Toys for sending me out this cabinet for the purpose of this review. I'm a huge fan of the classic Don Bluth Laserdisc arcade games, and I absolutely love the Dragon's Lair X Replicade. Let's see if this cabinet is just as good as that one was, and should you consider adding it to your Replicade collection. Here it is, the Space Ace Replicade from New Wave Toys, once again delivered in not one, not two, but three different boxes. The first inner box is the first piece of nostalgia I like to mention, as it is a recreation of the actual shipping box arcades were delivered in back in the day, and is just an example of the level of detail New Wave Toys delivers on these cabinets. So guys, let's talk about what's included with the cabinet. First up, we have the USB-C to USB charging cable. Of course, there's no power brick included. Next up, we have replacement ball toppers for the joysticks. You can choose which color you want to go with. Next to that, we have the mini replica Laserdisc, which we will cover later. As you remember, the original game was in fact on a Laserdisc in the cabinet. Next to that, we have the traditional New Wave Toys tokens. I love these, they're such a cool little feature. Then of course we also have the instruction manual, which is done to recreate the look of the actual operator's manual for the Space Ace original game. So if you were an arcade operator or an arcade owner, when you open up the box, you would find this instruction booklet inside. And last but not least, we have this beautiful colorful envelope with the Don Bluth classic artwork. And included inside is a beautiful Space Ace poster printed up on cardstock that you would normally see framed in an arcade or up in an arcade near the machine. So I decided to go with the Space Ace dedicated cabinet for a few reasons. First of all, I already had the Dragon's Lair Replicade and wanted a different form factor for my collection. And Space Ace Dedicated has a super unique form factor, so I knew that was the one I was going with. There are also some key differences with the control panel and scoreboard we will discuss later, but sticking with the control panel for now, it features this really interesting jutted out design that is actually a tad smaller than the width of the cabinet, and something I have not seen recreated on a replica arcade cabinet previously. The art on the side of the cabinet is once again very minimalistic, much like on the Dragon's Lair cabinet, featuring a plain black side with a vinyl art piece attached. The art is really interesting in that it features this gray coloring around the familiar Don Bluth art and looks great. The marquee is a replica of the familiar three-sided marquee, just like with Dragon's Lair. The coloring with this one, once again, is different from the conversion kit, continuing with the gray design from the side art panels, and is much less colorful overall, but still features that familiar Don Bluth artwork. The marquee is evenly lit, recreating the look of the original marquee, and there is no washout to be seen. Just below the marquee, you will find a scoreboard, which may look different from the traditional Dragon's Lair scoreboard you were used to, and seen on the Space Ace conversion kit. This is one of the key reasons I went with the dedicated version, as it caters specifically to the game where the conversion kit does not. On the dedicated version, the actual scores are moved to the left instead of the center of the screen, while on the right side you will see the words Space Ace, Captain, and Cadet, which represents the difficulty levels on the cabinet. Once you press the start button, these will flash in descending order repeatedly until you choose your difficulty. The scoreboard also reacts in correspondence with your performance in the game and is essential to recreating that arcade experience. Speaking of lit features on this cabinet, of which there are many, the machine features a faux coin door made of metal, even with a little key, but the real scene stealer is the light-up coin-in slots. If you have watched my previous Replicade reviews, you would know these slots actually double as buttons you press to actually register a coin in the game, which I think is just such a cool feature and really adds to the overall arcade recreation presentation. The control panel is mounted on a box that juts out from the front of the cabinet and does not span the entire width of the arcade. It has a control stick in the center and an action button on either side to accommodate both right-handed and left-handed players. The control panel also features 5 volcano-style buttons with 1 player and 2 player on one side, while the other 3 allow you to choose the 3 difficulty levels of the game. Unfortunately, these volcano-style buttons do not light up, and it would be awesome in future releases if they could find some way to integrate that. As I mentioned earlier, the control panel is less wide than the arcade itself, meaning you will have less usable space for your hands. As these are already 1/6 scale arcades, the controls usually feel a little cramped and it takes some adjusting to get comfortable with, but it is exasperated here where the control panel is even smaller. Like with Dragon's Lair, Space Ace requires precise button inputs at specific times, and on the cramped control panel, I did find I was missing some inputs due to my hand's positioning. After some adjustment, I was able to correct myself and had no issues entering the correct inputs, provided I caught the cues in time. The screen is the traditional 4.2-inch LCD 4x3 display, which shows the game in the correct aspect ratio. The screen is bright and vibrant, and there is no discernible washout or discoloration when viewing the screen from any angle. This is important with the angle of this screen, as to accommodate the larger scoreboard and faux speaker area, the screen is more tilted than with the Dragon's Lair cabinet, and you will be looking down at it. The picture quality of the screen is amazing, and all the beautiful Don Bluth art is perfectly featured. If for any reason you are unhappy with viewing the gameplay on the 4.2-inch LCD display, there is an HDMI out port on the back of the cabinet which allows you to display the gameplay on a larger screen. The picture on screen is great, displaying on the screen in 16:9, but with black bars on the side, and the actual gameplay is in the correct 4x3 aspect ratio, which is a feat that other home arcade companies have not seemed to master on some of their recent releases. The cabinet also has audio out for the HDMI as well, but in order to enable it, you will have to go into cabinet settings and switch from cabinet to HDMI. Speaking of sound, while there are tiny speakers located below the marquee, these are faux and merely to replicate the exact look of the original cabinet. The real speakers are located on the back of the cabinet, and for small speakers produce a surprising sound quality that is both loud and clear. If you do want to adjust the volume, there's a dial located on the back of the cabinet. The volume dial is located between the power switch and the USB-C port used for charging the cabinet. Directly under that, there are 2 USB slots that will allow you to plug in an external USB controller to play the game if you feel the control panel is too small, which we did talk about a little earlier, just like the HDMI out port. You will also notice a drawer on the back of the cabinet that houses a mini replica Laserdisc player, and they actually also included a mini replica Laserdisc. While not functional, of course, it's the little details like this that complete the authentic arcade experience with New Wave toys. I also want to say top marks for including a full-size HDMI out, so I didn't have to hunt down a mini HDMI cable in order to capture gameplay from this cabinet. I wish more companies would do this and avoid the mini HDMI. As for the game, it's the exact arcade ROM of Space Ace playing on the Daphne emulator. The game runs flawlessly with no audio or graphical issues, so you experience the game like it was meant to be played. If for some reason you are unfamiliar with Space Ace, it's a Laserdisc game, so an interactive QuickTime event game where you watch the movie play out off the Laserdisc and respond to on-screen cues with the correct button inputs to progress the story. If you miss a cue or press the wrong input, this will result in a death scene and your game will pick up at the next scene provided you have credits remaining. The trick to succeeding is repetition and memorization. The more you play, the greater you will memorize what cues you are looking for and the timing necessary to succeed. I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm having a blast playing through this quirky story on this great little cab. Anyways, guys, that's my look at the Space Ace X Replicade from New Wave Toys, and I have to say once again, I'm super impressed with what this company brings to the table. This cabinet is of the highest quality with a great build, arcade quality controls, impressive sound, an excellent screen. The game runs flawlessly through the emulation, and it has just about every added special feature you could ever think of. If you're looking for an at-home version of Space Ace to enjoy and you don't mind a smaller form factor, this may be the very best version to get. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think of the Space Ace X Replicade from New Wave Toys. Is this a cabinet that you're interested in? Or if you already picked one up, let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. This is Michael B. the Game Genie, and I'll talk to you next time.